Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to be explaining sidechain for complete beginners. Let's get into it. Hey guys, Phil Harris here from EDM Coaching. I've put this YouTube channel together to help anybody who's in their first couple of years of making music, help them make incredible dance music every single time with tricks and tips and explanations. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can get all of my videos moving forward. Now, without further ado, let's get straight into sidechaining. So, the first thing I need to explain to you is sidechaining is a form of compression. Just in case you have absolutely no idea what compression is, I'll leave a link to another video where I've explained it up here. However, for this demonstration, all you really need to know is compression affects audio volume. That's all you need to know, okay? Now, sidechaining is an interesting form of compression. Say we've got two lanes, audio lane A and audio lane B. What we're doing with sidechaining is we might say to audio lane B, every time audio lane A makes a sound, we want you to turn the volume down. Okay, now if I was to put this into a visual representation, it would look a bit like this. Remember, the original sound we had was just a consistent sound. It was just a wall of sound, so to speak. And up in audio lane A, we've got a kick drum that's going doom, doom, doom. In other words, it's a sound of stopping and starting. It's coming and going. Now, if we were to sidechain them, it would look a bit like this. Audio lane B would drop every time the kick drum made a sound and come back again, okay? That's essentially what sidechaining is, and it doesn't always have to be with kick, but it typically is. Which brings me on to my next point. The two most typical ways sidechaining is used in music, and specifically dance music. It's used primarily, most of the time, to duck to the kick drum and create a pumping effect, which I'm going to show you in a second. But this is also an interesting thing because with speakers, when they're overpowered, they tend to dip in volume a bit. So a reason why this is like psychoacoustically really interesting is because when you have all the instruments in your track dip every time the kick drum hits, it creates this effect that the speakers can't handle that kick drum, like boom, and everything kind of drops and comes back up. But it's also an interesting mixing technique because it means nothing is getting in the way of the kick. And the kick is always the main thing in dance music that people are dancing to. So you need to give it its own space. And by dropping all of the instruments to the kick, you're doing exactly that. Don't worry if this still seems a bit confusing, I'm going to explain it in more detail in a second. The second way that the sidechaining is used is to avoid frequencies clashing. So say for example you had a singer and you had a piano going, and they were both in the same kind of frequency range. They were making a similar kind of sound. Well, what you could do is just EQ one out of the way of the other. But with things like singing, it's not always there. Sometimes the singing's there, sometimes the singing's not. And what you want is when the singing's not there, that piano to play loud and proud. But when the singing comes in, you might sidechain it to the piano. So the piano dips gently out the way when the singing comes in. So they're not clashing. The one is automatically moving out of the way of the other. Okay, so they're the most typical ones. Now let's move into an actual demonstration for you. So first things first, ducking to the kick drum, creating a pumping effect. First thing that you need to do is route the compressor, okay? So let's just go to ABLETON here. I've got one lane with a kick drum on it, sounds like this. And I've got one lane with just a consistent sound. Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna sidechain the kick drum to this consistent sound. So you put the compressor on your sound that you want to dip. Then you go to the compressor, and this is specifically in ABLETON, but this will be the same with most sidechain compression out there. You open it up and there'll be a sidechain option which I can hit, and I can go and select the input, which is going to be this David Guetta kick here. Okay, so we've routed it. Now the next thing we need to do is threshold. The threshold is how much you want the one sound to affect the other sound, okay? So I'm going to come back to the compressor. The threshold is here. For now, I'm just going to turn on the ratio. I'm going to explain ratio to you in a second. But I'm going to bring this threshold down, and what you'll see pumping here is actually the kick drum. So what I'm going to do is just bring the threshold down, and you'll see I'll bring this needle point down below the volume of the kick drum. But Nothing is happening yet. All this is demonstrating is how much we want that kick drum to affect the current sound that's playing. The next thing you need to know is ratio. And that is, once you've brought that needle down below the volume of the second track, how much we want that volume to turn down in the track that's currently playing. So how much we want the volume turned down. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the ratio all the way up, just so it's really apparent to you. And you're going to notice as I bring this threshold down, it will turn the volume of this consistent sound down. You'll also see this gain reduction here, which is telling you how much reduction in volume we're actually getting. Okay, so the next two things you need to know about is attack and release. These things are going to be on every sidechain compressor out there. Attack is essentially how quickly we want the volume turned down, and release is how quickly we want the volume to return to normal, okay? Now here's a couple of tips for you when you're doing sidechain compression. Always have the ratio quite high. Have the attack as quick as possible. The threshold, bring it down, but I typically have it low enough that you can actually hear it doing stuff, but it usually is quite low. And then the release, all you need to know is you want the sound to return back to normal, especially in this case with the kick drum. You want it to return to normal before the next kick drum kicks in. So let's go and play around with this. We're going to put the ratio really high. We're going to put the attack as quick as possible, and we're going to put the release relatively, well, about the kind of 9 o'clock mark. And let's just bring the threshold down and see. Now, actually, for this instance, I'm actually going to change the view to this view where this blue line is the threshold. And you're going to visually see this dip pattern appearing. And there you go, you've sidechained the one sound to the other. Now the one thing I will say is if the release is too high, it will never actually return to its normal volume levels and it won't have that pumping effect. So you need to bring the release down until you can see that line return to full volume, which is usually pretty quick. Now at this point, I actually want to go slightly off topic and introduce you to my favorite plugin of all time. I'm not sponsored by this plugin or anything, I just think it's awesome. It's called Volume Shaper. If I bring it down, I'm going to show you exactly why this is awesome. I'm going to turn off this first compressor. Volume Shaper is perfect for dipping to a 4 on the floor kick drum. 4 on the floor kick drum is just dum, dum, dum. It's just a consistent beat. And what this plugin does is you don't have to route it, you just turn the volume down and it automatically will pulse with the beat. So what I can do is I can literally come and select a sidechain so you can see it drops and comes back up. It's essentially automating the volume level. Now something I absolutely love to do is drag Volume Shaper onto my kick drum to start. And if I was to just kind of reset it and play the kick drum, you'll see the kick drum actually play here. Now what I can do is, now I know where the kick drum, what space the kick drum occupies, I can actually come in here and draw a volume shaper or draw a sidechain compression around this kick drum. See, the kick drum's not playing because it's dipping the volume when the kick drum is playing. Now I can take this volume shaper that's on the kick drum track and drag it onto whatever sound I want. And I know it will perfectly move out of the way of the kick drum just because we just drew around it. And there you go, really awesome. Just in case any of you guys are interested in how to make this with ABLETON stock plugins, I'll show you at the end of the video. Now, the next thing I wanted to talk about was how sidechaining can be used to automatically avoid clashing frequencies. So this is quite interesting. Let me close this example down now and open this secondary example here, where we'd have some singing, for example, and a secondary sound which we've got just some guitars playing. Now these two are kind of occupying a similar space, so they would kind of clash slightly if I play them together. Especially if I turn up this guitar a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to now set up a sidechain compression, which is essentially going to move the guitars out of the way when the singing comes in. This can also be called multi-band compression because we're causing sidechaining to happen in a certain frequency band. So, first thing you need to do, go to the vocal track and put an EQ on it. Firstly, we're going to work out what vocal range this singing is actually taking up. So I've put one point in here with a really wide EQ. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to solo the singing, and I'm going to look at where I can see the most activity on this spectrum here is. So I can see most of it is around this kind of area, 1000 Hertz. Another good thing to do in these instances is you can actually put the headphones on, boost it, and have it sweep up and down the frequencies, and the headphones will only play you the frequencies that are in this sweep that you've created. Now I can sweep up and down and listen to where the main sound comes from. So I was right, it's around this 1000 Hertz, okay? Now I'm just gonna turn that band off. All I needed to know was that. I'm gonna come to this second band now, which is the guitar playing, and I'm gonna put a similar band back in place in that 1000 Hertz. Now what I'm going to get in Ableton is a really cool thing. Now on Ableton 11, what you've got to do is go to Audio Effects and come to Modulators and grab the envelope follower. But if you're in an earlier version of Ableton, you need to go to Max for Live to get this. Now what's going to happen here is every time that singing happens, envelope follower is going to trigger a pattern. Have a look. I put it on the wrong lane. Let me go and put envelope follower on the singing lane. You see it's created this pattern following the audio levels. I'm going to turn it up a bit so you can really see it. Now what we need to do is map this to this EQ band here, and specifically the gain. And what you can see is it's instantly dropped it. I'm going to remove that from there. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that it stays at the 50% level, then drops every time the envelope follower happens. So I'm going to put this to 50% here, which means that this is now at 50% mark. And when the sound triggers, I want it to drop to 0, okay? So now, every time that happens, if I come to this lane, you'll see this mimicking the singing. And of course, if I wanted to turn that down, I can just turn the gain down here so it's having less of an effect here. But this is really cool. We've essentially caused a sidechain effect to happen in a specific volume frequency range. So if I was to play these two together now, you should hear the dipping. How awesome is that? Now, for those of you who are still here, I did say I'd show you how to create a volume shaper for free using Ableton plugins. You can do this by going to Modulators or Max for Live if you've got an older version of Ableton than Ableton 11. Bring the shaper down onto the sound that you want to change, which is this one. Shaper is essentially an LFO. All you need to know about LFOs is they are consistent shapes that you can use to modulate or affect anything else. And you can see it already kind of looks familiar, doesn't it? So I'm just going to kind of draw a shape in here. I'm going to click Alt to bend this line down, and we've created that classic kind of shape that a sidechain would make. Then I'm going to go to Utilities, and I'm just going to literally affect the volume, which is the gain here. So I'm going to map this to gain. As you can see, it's going from all the way from the bottom to all the way to the top. So again, what we want is this to only go up to the 50% mark, which is up to there. And that's pretty much it. It goes from 0 up to 50%. Let's have a quick listen. Perfect. So if I was to put that with the kick drum now, you've created a free volume shaper using the Ableton stock plugins. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you subscribe. And also, why not go and watch this video right now where I explain compression in full to beginners. See you in tomorrow's video. Ciao.